spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat.
Hello everyone, and welcome back into another week of PSN Sports. And already, we got some notable games here from last week. We'll start off with them real quick and everything and run them down. And some games that, stuck out last week. We'll start with Dadeville beating Reeltown 40-13. Just give your little opinion off of that game.
Well, it wasn't a really big shock as far as the score goes. They're a bigger school, and I believe for the most part they've won a lot in the recent 10 years in that rivalry. So it's not the big shock as far as the win, but the margin maybe is a little bit of a shocker.
And Sparkman with a little bit of an upset over Scottsboro 32-30 last week. How did that fare out to you?
Well, Scottsboro played a really good game. They just seemed like they couldn't put them away, and they let Sparkman hang around and it come back to bite them.
And going to Bob Jones beating Decatur by a point, 32-31. Just your take on that game as well?
Well, Bob Jones is a really good team, and you would expect them to maybe handle Decatur a little bit more than that, but they had to, claw it out late to get the W.
And JB Pennington over Boaz, 36-18. Another game by Boaz. Boaz is normally a top program. JB Pennington is kind of on the lower end there. What do you think of that one?
Well, as far as I would call an upset, I don't know about you, but Boaz, like you say, predominantly a winning team. I know they're going through some hard times right now, and Coach Whaley, and our thoughts and prayers go out to him as far as his situation goes. But as far as the team goes, it's got to be a little disoriented at this point. And for Pennington, that was a big win.
And what about Tanner beating Colbert County 45-20? Tanner put it on them pretty good.
Well, they played a classic last year. I believe like maybe double overtime, somewhere in that ballpark. Real high-scoring game. Tanner seemed like they basically just picked up from last year and, dropping 45 on them. But maybe Colbert's down a little bit this year. Maybe Tanner's a little bit better. It's just going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season unfolds.
Before we move on here real quick, what is one of the teams that can have a bounce back for this week?
As far as
our notable games that we just sort of ran down real quick.
You might see Colbert bounce back. Like I say, that's a proud program, and you would expect them after taking a beating like that to come back strong.
Well, looking at some of the rankings here, starting with 7A, Gadsden City at number 10. Is that still too low, too high? Surprised you?
Well, I don't know. That might be a little low, honestly. They really impressed me last week. They took on a really good Oxford team and pretty much handled them.
And Southside, they're at number 14, just, 4 spots outside the top 10.
With a kid like Alaric Williams at your running back, you would think that would give you a really good opportunity to be successful. And, of course, but it really boils down to the defense, and they, kind of let them down in that first week. And can they continue to improve and help him?
And you have Fort Payne at 21. They kind of struggled the first half with New Hope. Then the second half, they kind of got things rolling. How does their outlook look in the rankings?
Their future's bright, I would have to say. They got Turner, and he, had a pretty good game for them. And, John Tyler Ellis is coming along pretty well. If you're a Wildcat fan, you got to be encouraged.
And Etowah in 5A now, they were number 10. They dropped 4 spots to 14, outside the top 10. Mm-hmm. Can they move back in the top 10?
They're going to get in a better part of their schedule now. They played a really good Northridge team and just barely got beat. And then you have another situation last week where they played a red-hot Coleman and got embarrassed for the most part. So, they kind of got to keep that positive attitude of saying that we are a good team, and that once we get back in a field that we're more familiar with and more competitive in, being our region, that they're going to be okay.
And you have North Jackson going from number 7 to number 8. They played a good game against Gurnersville last week. Does that really hurt them moving down one spot?
I would say not. They played a pretty good game. I mean, they led most of it, but it just didn't come out well for them.
And how about Sardis? They're at number 18. How do they look?
Once again, I mean, they're kind of like in that same boat of Fort Payne. There's a lot of potential there, and they were able to, so I need to give them a really good run. But, as the game went on and it got tighter, those kids that they needed to step up, the Kenan Lewises of the world, they stepped up and got that win for them.
And moving on in the rankings, you got Madison Academy. Number 1, they didn't move from last week.
Mm-hmm.
They get beat by a out-of-state team, Innsworth, Tennessee. Should they have moved down in the rankings?
I don't think so. I mean, anybody who knows anything about 3A football knows that it is Madison Academy's to lose. You got guys like Malik Miller. It was a little bit of a shock. Don't get me wrong. It really, it's a testament to how good Innsworth really is to be able to contain them.
And what about Glencoe? They come off a blowout win against Plainview last week. They're number 11, one spot outside the top 10. How good can they be?
Well, they showed that they can fight through adversity. They had their number 1 running back, Doherty, to go down, and then Bush stepped in and really played well for them.
And Tanner, they've got 7 first-place votes to 5, I think 19.
Mm-hmm.
How can they match and maybe even tie 5 for the number 1 spot or jump them to be ranked number 1?
Well, let me ask you this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was 5 not the unanimous number 1 starting the season?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking. No first-place votes, but only 2-5. As the weeks have gone on, it seems the voters have maybe changed their mind a bit. Maybe they're kind of starting to feel Mr. Townsend and his Rattlers. I mean, they're gaining some steam, and that win last week was huge for them, I think, in the eyes of the voters.
And what about Gadsden? They're, once again, 1 spot out of the top 10 out of 11.
They started the season 2 weeks ago, I believe, it tied for 10th, and then somehow or another they failed at 12, even though they didn't play a game. It seems to me, for the most part, they're right about where the voters have them.
And what about Raglan at number 17?
They're really falling hard right now. Getting really embarrassed down at Maplesville, and then going to the Ridge last week and just playing a solid game, but for the most part shot themselves in the foot and lost to a pretty good Gaston team.
And the last one on the rankings list, Woodville. They're just 12 spots out of the top 10 at number 22. I know you're kind of high on them for this year, like you was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Just how much praise do you want to give them?
Well, I don't know how high I am on them. I think it's a great story. Anytime you can take a program like this that's not used to winning, and all of a sudden they have that little bit of success here and there, it makes a big difference. As far as this season goes, that region is open just like it was last year, and this could be their opportunity to somehow, some way make the playoffs.
And after speaking of Woodville and the rankings, how about we go ahead and get into our week 3, but our week 2 games here, if that makes sense to our viewers out there. And looking at some of these games right here, we'll start off with 7A Sparkman at Gadsden City. Sparkman beat Scottsboro last week. Gadsden City, they're always Gadsden City. They're always good.
Sure.
Who do you like, and what do you like about the team that you're picking?
Got to go with the Titans. It's at home. They're on a roll, and they're too much for Sparkman.
What about Arab at Fort Payne?
This is going to be an interesting game as far as just a positional type game in that region, because the winner of this game will all of a sudden bolt to the front. So, as far as this matchup goes, I would have to lean more towards the Wildcats on this thing. A-Rod's coming off just a beat down. They lost to Coleman, the first week, and then this past week also kind of got whooped by Madison County. So you would think, unless they somehow, some way can pull it together, that Fort Payne's going to win this thing.
And sticking in 6A, Scottsboro at Brewer. Can Scottsboro bounce back from a tough loss?
If anybody, or I should say, if any opponent would be perfect for a bounce back, I believe it would be Brewer. Would you not agree?
I'd agree. So, Brewer's that team that's not really up to standards, I guess.
No.
And Scottsboro has a good running back. They have a good offense. Just feeding the ball and, let him do his thing.
Exactly. The Carlo Billingsley, feed him the rock, and the Wildcats should come out with a W.
And staying on this game real quick, is defense going to be a factor for either team?
I see Billingsley going bananas, and it just putting it on him. That's just my view on that.
So you don't think, Scottsboro can give up a lot of points?
They might, because, you got to look at it from this standpoint. Sparkman was able to score 32 on them. Sparkman is not a really powerful offensive team, so you would think that they might be just a little bit vulnerable, and Brewer might have an opportunity to score some points at least.
Well, sliding down to 5A, Etowah going to Douglas. How did this one play out in your perspective?
Once again, Etowah 0-2. They're feeling the pain, but the remedy is the Douglas Eagles. Sorry, folks, if you're from Douglas, but it's going to get ugly. Etowah's going to be on you like a cheap suit.
So you think Etowah is ready to pick up their first win?
Oh, absolutely. And Douglas is in serious trouble.
Well, what about a 5 and 6 matchup between Guntersville and Madison County?
This is going to be a fight. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. You got you 5 versus 6, I believe. And, I mean, it's just going to be a slugfest. The only thing that really is going to be a little bit different from last year is it's going to be at Madison County. Can Guntersville go on the road and get a win? We know they can win by the lake. They're good at home. But can they go on the road and get the W? Can Bentley just have a huge performance against normally a really good defensive team? I believe last year the results on that was Guntersville won it late, like 19-14. So I don't know about you, but I really struggled with this one, but I think I'm going to have to go with Guntersville.
I think so too. I think Bentley in that run attack. Don't get me wrong, Madison County, like you said, it'd be a dogfight going down there.
It will.
But I think Bentley and Guntersville at the end just take care of business. And sliding into 4A, Jacksonville at Crossville. Who gets the win?
It's all about the remedy, it seems, this week. You got Jacksonville, once again, 0-2. They need a W. And poor old Crossville is on the lunch menu, so to speak, and it could be a long night for the Lions.
Well, me and you was talking earlier, and how many games was it that Crossville had won over like 3 years or something like that?
That would be 3. It didn't take long to add that one up. Them folks, they are really struggling. They need a W, like something awful. They were 0-10 last year. They played a formidable opponent they could have possibly got a W over last week and just didn't get it done.
Well, let's stick with Crossville just for one more second. Do you think they need to go to a lower classification to try to compete?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you look at their roster, I mean, this is a roster that is like a 2A roster as far as kids. So the depth issues, and then you factor in also that region that they're in 4A, which is just nasty. There's just no other way to put it. Even Brian Cloud has said it is nasty. So, I mean, he understands what he's up against. And, yeah, I mean, if he could go down to 3A right now, I think he'd go in a heartbeat.
If they were to go down to 3A or, say, even 2A, if they got in the region with 5 or got in the region with Plainview and all those teams, could they compete for it? Just maybe even a region title?
Right now, no. They just don't have the depth to do it. Years past, I would say even maybe 4 years ago, I think they could have competed in 3A. But right now, no.
Well, going on down here with our games for this coming week, sliding into 3A, Brindley at Sandrock. What do you like about this game, and who do you like?
Well, Brindley's got a new coach. Sandrock's got a new coach. So, whole new situation. But I believe we're going to have the same old result. Rock's going to roll. Brindley might be a little closer than normal, but ultimately it's going to go down for the Wildcats.
Well, staying in Region 7, Geraldine at New Hope. Geraldine coming off a loss to 5. Of course, New Hope coming off a loss to Fort Payne last week. Who picks up win number 1?
It's all about who can keep their confidence. Both teams, as you say, coming off losses. Who has that ability to pull up their bootstraps and put their best effort on the field? Forget about the non-region stuff. Understand that this is a huge, huge game. As we've seen over the last 2 years in that region, every game counts. If you want to win the region, you got to win those first games. And, as far as this matchup goes, it's really a struggle to me. These two teams are not just overly impressive, but they're not bad in that right. They have a lot of potential. They're just young, and they got to figure it out. But as far as a pick, I would have to go with probably New Hope to win this thing.
You think quarterback play for New Hope will be a big factor in the game?
I think so. You look at Geraldine historically, they have trouble against the pass. So, if he gets the pass cranking, it could be trouble for the Bulldogs.
Well, can New Hope stop Geraldine's rushing attack?
It's a good question. If you've seen any of the film on the Fort Payne game, they had trouble with the little small backs and just catching those creases against those bigger linemen. So, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that wing T to, put some serious stress on that defensive line. What do you see on that game as far as a pick?
As far as the pick, I was at the Fort Payne New Hope game last week. Like you said, and I know Fort Payne's a 6A school. They're a bigger school. They got more players that they can rotate in and out.
True.
But you see how New Hope got wore down, like you said, with the smaller backs. Especially on the little slip screens that Fort Payne likes to run and getting outside and everything. Being in their same region and open up region play for both schools, I like New Hope in this one. I think, like you said, the passing attack will be a little bit too much for Geraldine to handle. And I do think New Hope can be able to stop Geraldine. I kind of think it'll be close, but I think at the end, New Hope will stop the run, and the passing attack for New Hope will be too much for the Bulldog defense in Geraldine.
Well, I'll say this as far as one guy to watch out for, and that's and it could be an X factor, because if he has a big game, it could be the difference in it, and that's Mr. Cotton, the running back for New Hope.
He's a pretty big and elusive back when he gets going. I know he had several good runs last week against Fort Payne, and their only score of the game came by him. I believe it was in the third quarter, and he broke a 45-yard touchdown run right up the middle. So he's got the ability to break free, when the schemes of blocking are needing to be the right way.
Yeah.
But moving on down and staying in the same classification and the same region for the next two games, North Sand Mountain coming off a shutout loss to Dade County in Georgia, and Plainview coming off to a blowout loss to Glencoe. How can both teams bounce back and try to get their first win as well this week?
Well, it's pretty simple. You look at both films, and it's just a real unanimous thought. Score some points. Plainview could not score last week. They got some cheap garbage touchdowns late just to make it look better, and poor North Sand didn't even score at all. So, you got two struggling offenses at this point. I mean, we could be looking at maybe a 3-2 game. It looks like, but I mean, that's not what I'm going to say is going to happen. But it's not probably. I mean, it would not blow my mind to see that happen between these two offenses. Eric George is probably your most explosive player for maybe on the field in general in this matchup. But can David Martin, can he get going and get this Plainview offense going is the big question.
Well, can Plainview have a breakout season with new head coach and everything and a new coaching staff? Or do you think this is the year to where they don't make the playoffs and they're just going to have a letdown year?
I mean, every time that people think Plainview is down, they still find a way to make the playoffs. So it wouldn't shock me if they did, but if you just look at the current present state that they're in, I would definitely be worried at this point.
Yeah, because, last week they didn't look good at all.
No.
From what I heard and read and everything.
The stats were pretty, very dismal.
What about North End? Can they make a push for the playoffs?
No. They don't have the depth. I mean, this is an extremely, extremely young team. You've only got roughly 8 seniors on this team. Most of these kids, this is the second year they've played football in general. I mean, they've got some of these kids off the basketball team to play football just to field a team. So bless their hearts, they're struggling, and it's going to be a tough road for them.
Well, the last game in 3A and Region 7, Sylvania at Pisgah. 1, of course, who do you like? And 2, how good can Sylvania be? Can they also contend for a region title?
Well, I'm going to take a step back. I actually forgot to pick that dismal game. I'm going with the Bears, by the way. But anyway, you have Sylvania, who is just they're brimming with confidence and with a lot of hope. Roebuck and the offensive line, they've really improved also. And as far as Pisgah goes, they know who they are. This is not a new group. They have the Jordan Jeffrey kid running the ball. You've got Smothers at quarterback. They love to throw the screen. Can Sylvania's defense step up and stop that? That's going to be your biggest factor. If they can just slow down Pisgah to an extent, Sylvania will be successful, and I believe they will.
Do you like Sylvania to beat Pisgah?
I do.
Okay, well, folks, there's 3A, and now sliding into even lower classifications, 2A. Number 7, Cleveland, traveling to number 1, Fife. Shootout, defensive game, who wins? But before you make that pick, sort of some breaking news that I got earlier is Will Mashburn, Fife quarterback. He's done for the year, tore his ACL last week.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a factor will that be?
That is huge. Devil Nation, I'm sure, is a little bit worried right now. You have your defending state champion quarterback coming back. You feel so good about him. He's the constant of that offense. He's the constant of that backfield. And now he's not there. They don't have anybody behind him with a lot of quarterbacking experience. So it's going to take somebody to step into that role, and they're probably going to have to lean a whole lot more on Kilpatrick than they ever intended. And as far as this matchup goes, you talk about defensive struggle or you talk about shootout. You have Cleveland's defense, they're not that great. I mean, they give up a lot of points last year in some big games, and I believe give up something like 55, 56, somewhere in that ballpark last year to Fife. So they definitely have some bad memories of the Red Devils. And then you have Fife's defense, on the other hand, a lot of new faces, and didn't look that great last week. You give up a 97-yard touchdown, which was, very unusual. And, there's some holes there. So, I mean, if they can be in Cleveland, if they can get Peyton Gillan going and, throwing the ball, running the ball, and doing everything that he can do, he can definitely give Fife some problems. And then on the other side of things, you have Ashley, who needs to step up because he needs to be a huge factor to help Kilpatrick along. As far as a pick, even though Fife's wounded, it's at Fife, and that's going to be a big, big, big task for Cleveland to win, seeing how Fife hadn't lost a region game since 2002 at Fife. So, as far as a pick, I got to go with Fife.
And do you think it'll be close, or do you think it'll be a runaway?
It could be close for a while, but I think Fife pulls away.
Okay. What about Collinsville at West End?
A team brimming with confidence right now. The Patriots, you got Hunter Grant coming off a huge, huge game against Susan Moore. They got their W. They're 1-0. As we're on the other side of things, you got Collinsville, who's coming off a loss to their rival. So, they're not feeling that great about themselves, even though they did rack up, I believe, 495 yards of offense last week. So the offense was really cranking, but they made too many mistakes. Can they clean it up? And if they can, this could be a super, super shootout. If you like points, this might be your game. As much as I really would like to pick the Patriots, I got to go with Ernie and his Panthers.
So you think Collinsville will get the W?
I do.
Okay, speaking of Collinsville, how good of a year can they have?
I think it's going to definitely have to be better than last year. I think last year was a huge disappointment. I believe anybody in that program will tell you they just kind of underestimated the jump from 1 to 2A. The physicality factor they might not have been ready for. So, they're looking to try to get in that 4th spot this year.
Okay. I'm going to shoot you a number real quick on over-under. Over-under, they get at least 7 wins.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 6.
I think they make the playoffs.
Maybe.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and I'll say they might get in that 4th spot.
4th spot?
I do.
Okay. What about Section at Gadsden?
It's at the Ridge, and Section really, really struggled offensively against a not very good defensive team in Pisgah. So if you can't score against Pisgah and you go up against a better defense like Gaston has, who shut down a normally prolific offense in Raglan, it doesn't bode well for you. And I like Coach Morris and the Dogs to pretty much pull away.
Switching to 1A now. You got number 4 Cedar Bluff going to number 5 Spring Gardens. How good of a game can it be, and your pick on this one?
Well, it was 21-20 last year, and the Garden, snuck out of there with a win. So as far as this game goes, I expect it to be really close. It could be a bit of a shootout, but I like Bluff to win it this time.
Okay. Coosa Christian at Valley Head, both coming off bad losses. Once again, I know I'm probably being, repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets the win number 1?
You got to go with the Tigers. Poor old Coosa lost to a not a very good Winterboro team, like 44-0. So they didn't even score. So that definitely would worry me if I were a Crusader or Warrior or whatever they are. But Valley Head, they had their moments last week, so they got to build off that, and I believe they'll get a W.
And last game here, Gageville at Outer.
You got to go with the Hornets on this one. Basically, they're playing a team that is not as good as Valley Head, and they pretty much handled Valley Head, so it's theirs to lose.
Can Outer make a push for the playoffs?
They can. They're going to battle for that 4th spot. Them and Collinsville, it's going to come down to that game, I do believe, and the winner will take that 4th spot.
So you got Collinsville battling for 4. You got Outer battling for 4.
I do.
If you had to pick right now, who would get in?
I pick right now. I got to go with Ernie and his Panthers.
Close or runaway?
Really close, but I got to go with them. I got to give them the edge.
And, switching gears to our top performers. There's 2 of them we got this week. I'll go first. We got Josh Decker from Cedar Bluff, 180 passing yards, 140 rushing yards, and 320 total yards. good game last week. What do you think about his performance?
He got the win, and he beat his rival. So, I mean, what more do you want from him? As far as my pick, I got to go with Hunter Grant, West End's quarterback. We're looking at 225 through the air and 95 on the ground, and 3 touchdowns running and 3 touchdowns passing. I mean, that's pretty even stuff, and he was the team, and they got a big win over Susan Moore.
And last, right here, before we sign off, our team of the week. Our team of the week is Walter Welborn. They beat Sachs last week 21-20. But speaking of that, Sachs has won 5 of the last 6 over Welborn. I don't really know how to put it, but Welborn being team of the week, beating Sachs. How good of a win is that for them?
Big win. I mean, these two schools, they don't like each other. They're close in proximity. It's just your classic rival game. You got big brother versus little brother being Welborn. And it just so happened little brother caught big brother napping maybe and got the W.
Well, once again, is there anything you're looking forward to this coming week?
Just all these big matchups, as far as, you have a lot of matchups where you got both of them in the top 10. That's exciting to me because these are games that are going to have a huge effect as far as the season goes, as far as your rankings goes, as far as your region standings go, and it's all going to come together in this week and going forward.
Any games besides the ones that we went over tonight that you're also looking forward to?
Not really. I mean, I think we pretty much touched on everything. How about you?
I think so. I think we pretty much covered, everything in our area and kind of outside of our area and region.
Mm-hmm.
But for us here at PSN Sports, subscribe to our YouTube channel, look us up on Twitter, and follow us. If you have any type of breaking news or anything that you may want to know, just like I said, look us up on Twitter, find us, ask us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. But from us here at PSN Sports, watch football this weekend and have a great weekend, and we'll see you back next week.